Okay, so this is my solution to the conundrum I have. Calor have stopped being supporting the small bottle range. You can't get them refilled anymore, and there's an issue of FloGas bottles, the inconsistency in the sizes, that means that some of us, and I'm one of those person, cannot safely or reliably switch to FloGas. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, click on this link here. It'll go through it. I'll put another card at the end of this video. You can click on to take a look at that. 90% of people, I guess, most people will be okay, but there will be a minority, a small minority like me, who are screwed because of this bloody Calor announcement. Okay, now I'm going to go with a refillable system. Now look, before we crack on, Van Hacks Info, we're all grown-ups on this channel. We could all make up our own minds what we can confidently do and not do, and we don't tolerate any patronising preaching from people who want to tell us what we can and cannot do, okay? But this is gas, so please bear with me on just two things. First of all, particularly when we get to the locker, I'm going to be talking about the regs, okay? And you know on social media, when people start referring to it, the regs, they really have not got a clue what they're on about. They've got no more clue than a dead goldfish, because if they really knew, they'd be saying what regs they are, the catalogue number, and the edition, what edition they are. But they don't just say the regs because it gives them a bit of authority. So when I refer to the regs, I'm referring specifically to the specification for the installation of LPG systems for habitation purposes in leisure accommodation vehicles and accommodation purposes in other vehicles, which is BSEN 1949, and it's the 2021 edition is the current version at the time of making this video. BS 1949 is the regulations that your van, your gas rig must comply with. Mandatory, you must comply with if you're going to rent out your van, okay? Now I'm not renting out my van, so why am I choosing those regs? Well, quite simply because there are no regs for DIY personal use vans, so it's a good standard to adopt, I think. Okay, so that's what I'm referring to when I refer to the regs. Secondly, when you proceed to do what you want to do, if you're thinking to go for a refillable system and you're watching this video, I would be awfully grateful if you would consider that I too have no more clue than a dead goldfish. Okay, now this might be a Gregism, but I really do not think social media, random guys on social media, is the place to get advice on safety matters. So I'm going to also put in the comments two things. First of all, as a link to where you can buy the rigs if you want to. Okay, it costs you a bit of money, but that's probably not such a bad investment maybe. And some of you might say, well actually I've got a copy of the 2011 regs or even the 2002 regs. I'm sure they'll be good enough to give me guidance on how to do a safe installation. Well, yes, you might think that. I couldn't possibly comment. If you want to buy the latest regs, there they are. Okay, the other link I'm going to put there is a link to Gas Safe, and where you can find a person to put in your installation if you want to, or maybe get a Gas Safe registered engineer with the LPG accreditation to have a look and inspect your system. But some of the guys actually, they won't just check over someone else's work. Some of them will only sign off their own or accredit their own work. Okay, but the links are down there if you want to do them. Right, no more patronising stuff. Let's crack on. So first of all, let's look at the kit that I go for. Now I looked at all the different, there's various refill kits. I've gone for Gaslow, which do safe refillable bottles, legal refillable bottles, but also they do accessory kits that enable you to use those bottles as a permanent installation, and that's what I've gone for. Okay, so basically 4 bits of kit then. There's the bottle itself, and this is a 6 kilogram, but I'm going to give you a detailed look at the business end of that in a minute in my workshop. Set steel hoses, high pressure hoses, to go from the bottle to the regulator, and then you'll need a steel hose to go from the regulator to your gas manifold, or possibly a flexible rubber one, and I'll talk about that in a minute. You need the regulator itself. This is a 30 millibar wall mounted one, and then the fill kit, so that's where you plug the pump in, and then it takes from the pump filling point to the input on the bottle. Okay, so let's look at the business end, the top end of the Gaslow refillable bottle. So there you go. Obviously, that's the on-off, the on-off, the open and close, for the valve. Rotating it round, and that will go to your regulator. I'm having a bulkhead 30 millibar bulkhead mounted regulator. Okay, revolving round. So that there is the refilling point. Now Gaslow got various ways of getting the gas in, bits of gizmo. I'll show you mine later, but basically the hose goes out there to the refiller. You can mount them just on the outside of your van. There's a hose and you can just do that. I'm going to mount mine on the outside of my gas locker, which is going to be just inside the back doors, and I'll show you that later on. And it's revolving right way around again. This here is the gauge to tell you how much gas you've got. I'm going to zoom in on this. Now I particularly like this. I like the design of it because you can read it looking down and you can read it looking that way as well, which I will need to do because my locker will be that high, so when I open the locker drawer I'll be able to see what I've got in there. And that's the black line, and you can see it goes green, yellow, red. Red is, it says reserve, which means you've got a little bit of gas left there but you need to get filling up. Now the thing about this is not like the things you can buy to put in line on the old Calor system where it's sort of looking at pressure and guessing how much you've got left. This is actually driven by a plunger that's inside the bottle. So it's very, very accurate. So that's the kit. Okay, so let's now start talking about the locker itself. Now, you can buy lockers, of course, but you may not be able to get one the right size, but there are plenty of those metal lockers out there. But can you make your own? Well, you can, I certainly did. There's regs around it, which I'm going to adhere to, and I can tell you a little bit about those. Whether you choose to or not, it's your choice. But one thing that surprised me, there are not regs that say you have to have a fireproof locker, which kind of surprised me a bit, although I have seen plenty of coach-built motorhomes with moulded in fiberglass lockers or wooden lockers. I used to work in the fiberglass engineering sector, and actually you can get very good fire retardant resins, a bit expensive mind you, and treatments for wood, either a coating, a heat coating, Rust-Oleum do a good one, or if it's a finished wood, it's something that soaks into the wood so they don't burn. They will decompose eventually under extreme heat. But talking to a guy at work when I built my old van, an old timer, he kind of chuckled at my naivety, and he basically said, look, the bottle itself is going to protect the gas from flames, the way it's constructed. What you really need to avoid is heat, because if the bottle gets too hot, it'll explode. I've seen a video of a bottle going up. You want to avoid that. And basically a small metal box of 1.5mm steel wrapped around the bottle is not going to give you any protection against extreme heat. So if you're in a fire, don't think, oh, I've got a metal gas locker. No, run. So actually you don't need to. Now my feeling is no harm in having fireproof or fire resistant. So my locker is going to be a mixture of sheet steel and treated wood. Okay, so there's a quirk on my system that gives me an excuse to talk about flexible hoses. So what I'm going to have inside my gas locker, and I've got it already on my old system, is a solenoid, which I can shut the gas on and off from a switch inside the van. And actually, I only turn the gas on when I'm cooking. Okay, I've got an electric fridge, so the gas circuit's only pressurised when it needs to be pressurised. Okay. In addition, although I've got dropout vents under the hob and the oven, we'll talk about those in a minute, but in the cavity between the two I've got a 12-volt LPG gas sniffer. That is an alarm. Basically, if I get a leak it should give me an alarm, and if the power to that fails, it will also fail to the gas solenoid, so the gas gets shut down. And thirdly, I've got a crash switch. If I ever get a crash, it cuts the power off, which again cuts the power to the gas solenoid. There's no gas coming through. So, it's just a bit of a safety thing I'll put in. Now, I should say the Gaslow bottles have got their own crash protection in as well. So, that gives me an excuse to talk about rubber hoses, because I will need a flexible hose to go from my regulator to that gas solenoid. Now, the regs say, and I'm choosing to go by the regs, and of course you don't have to, because you don't have to do this for DIY vans, only if you're renting them out. Maximum of 400mm, or if you've got your bottle on a slide-out tray, you can go up to 750, and I think that's also the reg. I don't know for sure. I think that's also the reg if you have a standalone bottle with a temporary cooking appliance in. I think the distance from your pigtail regulator that goes on your bottle to that temporary or that mobile appliance is 750ml. So of course power is going into the gas locker, and the regs say you can bring in power to a gas locker to control gas equipment such as the gas solenoid, and that has to be what they define as extra low voltage, which is 120 volt smooth DC, which means no ripples on the wave, or 50 volts AC, less than that. You can also have wires going through from one side to the other, but they must be unjoined. So, so we talked about dropout vents. You need a dropout vent under your appliances, but the regs require a dropout vent in your gas locker. And basically it's got to be 2% of the surface area of the floor, or if you've got a bottle under 7 kilograms, which I have, you can have a 20mm diameter ducting. But actually I don't like to go for the absolute minimum, so I've got actually a 60mm diameter hole vent out into the outside world. Okay, so you'll need an upstand. The regs require you have at least a 50mm upstand before you have your door, and that's because propane and butane are heavier in there. They'll sink down and they'll pool in that and give it a chance to go outside of the dropout valve and not sort of sneak through the side of your door if it's not gas tight. Mine is pretty gas tight, but if it isn't, that's why you have that pooling area at the bottom. The cylinder itself must be secured in 2 places, one at the bottom to stop it sort of shuffling around like that, and one sort of halfway or high level to stop it tipping over. So 2 points of securing the bottle. So once it's all together, I'm obviously going to be testing it for leaks using good old-fashioned leak detector spray, although I have got this bit of kit as well, which is really good. It's about 32 quid I think, but a really worthwhile bit of kit. This is very, very sensitive. On the high sensitivity setting, it will alarm way before you see those bubbles form with the leak detector spray. And those really microscopic leaks that may not even show a bubble or might be out of view, this bit of kit will pick it up because you can get it behind the joint, the bits you can't see. Okay, so anyway, BS 1949 says you need to whack the system up, do a one-off pressure test at 150 millibars on a 30 millibar downstream system, and hold it there for 5 minutes, and there must be no more than a 10 millibar pressure drop in that time. Because I'm a little bit perhaps OCD with my respect for gas and caution, in my rig I've got a manometer plumbed into the circuit, so I test my rig every time I go out, or almost every time. However, the regs do not give you a leak test for, or tolerance for, your working pressure. Now I've got 0 leak at the moment, which is great, but if something developed, I want to know how serious it is. Now fortunately LPG UK have given some guidance, and what they're saying is you're working 30 millibar working for a typical panel van conversion, you should get no more than a 5 millibar pressure drop over 2 minutes. Now I tried to work out what that means in the real world, and I did that by measuring the diameter of my manometer tube and the length represented by 5 millibar. It is not a lot of gas, okay? And what I reckon it is less than the gas. In 24 hours, you would be leaking less gas than you release into the atmosphere every time you make a cup of tea, and there's a 1 second delay between you turn the gas on and it's sparking. So it's not a lot of gas. But fortunately, at the moment, I've got no pressure drop at all, 100% tight. So that's my locker in the workshop. I've made it modular so I can take it out of the van with all the kits in, everything. And just bring it to the workshop for any reason. And I, particularly to kick off with, I wanted to do all the integrity testing in the workshop where there's plenty of space, plenty of light, so I can pressurise the system out, get the gas going, and check all the joints for leaks. So this bit here is the bit where you refill it, take it off, and the socket from the pump goes in there, and there's a video of me later on filling up. Just drop it down. There's the Gasler bottle in position there. Inside locker door, just some information telling me to keep the dropout vent clear, which of course I'm going to do, and when to replace the rubber hose in there and the washers on the regulator. Right then, so let's have a look at the locker in the van. Okay, so that's my solution to the Calor gas dilemma, and I hope it was of interest, and just of interest, as I said right at the very beginning, regardless of what experience I might have or might not have in putting in LPG systems or accreditation I might or might not have, please assume I know absolutely nothing and satisfy yourself what you do is right and you're competent in doing it. And if you need gas engineers, there's a link down there, a link to get it, along with a link to the regulations if you want to buy them. So finally then, now I've got it, actually the good thing is gas is really, really cheap on the refill. It's tremendously cheaper compared to the bottle swap. And I've worked out, even though I had to buy the kit, I've only got to use my van for 13.5 years and it's all paid back. Yeah, thanks Calor. Catch you later guys.